Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the Village of Bellows Falls Trustees meeting.
All right, so good evening. Welcome to the Bellows Falls Village Trustees. Well, it's not really a regular meeting now, it's special, I suppose, because it got canceled due to the storm. It is now Thursday, February 6th. I'm looking at the wrong thing. It's Thursday, March 16th. Right, and it's 6:02. Okay, down here in the lower theater. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's see. I just noticed that mine said February 14th, the old.
I know, just the old one.
And we need to approve the minutes. I'll give Wade a minute to sit down. And then. So what we need to do next is to approve the minutes of Tuesday, February 28th, 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes of Tuesday, February 28th, 2023.
I second.
Okay, and is there discussion on the minutes from last one? Let me make sure. Is anything? And Wade, do you have any?
No, I was good on them.
Oh, great. Then all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any, we are all in agreement there. Any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a later meeting? I know I have one, we've got a couple of applications for open air events.
Correct.
Here, and I would also like to add somewhere on here, the emergency management piece, considering what we've just gone through. I think the village should be involved and open a discussion because there's clearly some gaps we need to look at. I don't know where we would like preferably to put it. Let's see, how about under number 2, after 2, so it would come after the green bike parking project request. And where to put the applications for open air, probably 2, like some 2A, B, and C, to get them done all at the same time. Okay, so thank you. Yes. Yes, I know, that's what we're, yeah.
What do you want me, or who? Or-
Yes, let's get
All right.
down to there, but we're
Yep.
not there yet. Public comment on items? Is there anybody out there who wants to speak? Should we wait then? If it's all on the same topic, that's fine, since we have added that piece, so if you wanna wait, that's great. And we're good on screen?
Anybody, Peter, did you have anything, or?
Nope.
Okay, great, that's it.
Okay. And, I'm sorry,
Here,
Yeah,
around
you're
the
with the
emergency
same-
stuff, yeah.
same thing, okay. All right, then, manager's report, we move on. Scott.
So, a couple things, so, and I know we'll get into more detail during the storm itself, but I think there were a few things that became fairly self-evident during a storm like this. When Green Mountain has a regional event, they have these various zones that they can call in for extra help, and I think in this instance, the storm was so widespread that they couldn't get their initial wave of additional help, and I think that's why you saw them sort of struggling in the beginning to get, their arms around just the scope of the problem. So we have, I think at the moment, still one road blocked out in rural Rockingham, but for the most part, I think everybody at this point has been restored that I was aware of in the village.
This afternoon.
Mostly this afternoon. They did, like I said, we were coordinating extra crews, and we've also been coordinating removing trees and some other obstacles out in the rural part of Rockingham. Had a couple problems that we didn't anticipate that we're gonna have to follow up on, which were really problematic. Our radio repeater on Fall Mountain, which has a backup system, failed. So in the middle of the storm, we had no ability to communicate with our cloud crews, which was a tremendous pain, as you can imagine. So we have to find out exactly what happened there, because there is generators and there are backups to that system there. Police and fire functioned and worked, but for some reason we lost our DPW radio, so that was a.
Scott, can you speak a little louder? I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you.
Sure.
Thanks.
So So we're gonna have a formal after action report with all of our police, fire, EMS, and all of our various people. We did have the warming shelter for 2 nights that was partially staffed. Obviously, if we have a larger scale event, the management plan talks about having a real warming shelter at the high school, which is not realistic if you're having school. So there's got to be some changes and some updates to that if we're going to go forward and offer that opportunity. And the other challenge, quite frankly, in the middle of a storm like this is even if you can open up shelters, is the ability for people to get there. Traveling conditions are pretty treacherous the first 12 hours. I suppose the second 12 hours, somebody could have made their way to a warming shelter if it was open or available. We did have them, like I said, open and available for 2 evenings, sparsely attended. And I guess the other challenge that we have to face is just the ability to communicate with people in an event like this with either a sort of callback system, or there's all sorts of online systems that use 911 data to call people and give them information and updates during storms. We have not invested in one here, and it's probably something we'll have to look at and consider as we go forward. The challenge with those are, quite frankly, a lot of people don't keep their information necessarily up to date. So the 911 might have an old landline, and most people these days are using their cell phones. So what you find a lot of times is
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Being the application for parade and open air events permit by Peter Bergstrom.
Scott, you're muted.
Did you want to
Yeah.
speak to this application, Peter?
How about now, Peter?
Yeah, I'm back. Is Steve still there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Steve Crafter? Do you want to speak to it or shall I?
I think you have more details, Peter. Why don't you?
Okay, you're in the room. I mean, the Zoom seems to be dropping out. Yeah, we've never done this event before, but many other towns have had electric vehicle, electric lawn device fairs, and we wanted to try offering one, and it seemed like Henny Green Park would be an excellent site because there's space on the green if we want to have some tables, and there's space for some cars in the parking lot. We had 7 electric vehicles in the 4th of July Saxons River Parade last year, and that was very popular. So we want to try that this year with a rain date on Sunday, just in case, because it wouldn't be much fun to do in the rain. And as I put down, we might get about 30 people attending.
Okay, you've got the time for the event start at 10 and ending at 2, but you'll need time for prep at the beginning and clean up at the end, yes?
Yes.
I don't see any issue with it, gentlemen. Discussion?
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
I'll move that we grant the parade or open event application for Peter Bergstrom and the Kenny Green Park.
Second that.
That being April 22nd.
April 22nd or Sunday, April 23rd.
Third, thank you. All right, any further discussion?
I would just let you know that April 22nd is Earth Day.
Yes,
So it's very appropriate.
I'm sorry, we didn't point that out, but yes, it is on the application.
Yeah.
That is definitely.
And I'm representing the Rockingham Energy Committee. I'm the chair.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter. The only thing I would say is I wish we were doing Green Up Day on the same day, but we don't do that. I'm just coordinating.
Great Up Day has a long tradition in Vermont. We're not going to try to mess with it.
Okay, so all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, you have your event.
Thank you.
very much. Next, we have the request from 40 Days for Life, Becky Ellen Matthews, requesting Saturday. Oh, well, that's coming up quick.
Yes.
Tomorrow. Oh, they want to do it, is it every Saturday?
I think every Saturday from the 18th of March to the 18th of April.
And starting at 10 a.m. and ending at noon of each day. And
Correct.
it would be the location,
The sidewalk area
sidewalk in front of
near Walgreens.
Walgreens, yeah. Okay, so each Saturday. So that's what, 3 weeks?
Is it every Saturday or is it like straight from Saturday through?
April 8th.
Yeah.
So that's
It will only
4
be on
Saturdays, right?
Saturdays, right?
Only be on Saturdays?
No, I guess it's, so
10 to noon.
10 to noon, that's right. Okay, so,
Yeah, April 18th is a Tuesday, so
oh, wait, no, that's April 8th,
April 8th.
4/8.
okay, yeah,
Okay, so it's another Saturday.
oh, sure.
Okay.
It says through, it doesn't say anything about just Saturday.
So it's
Well, yeah, it does, I know, it starts 3/18, but it only means Saturday,
4 Saturdays.
Saturdays, yeah, each Saturday.
Okay.
That's 4 Saturdays.
Yeah, it's the 18th, 25th, 1st, and the.
Okay, the 1st and the 8th, yeah, so 4.
Right.
Seems low impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing is they'll have to make sure that people can get through since it's a public.
Oh, thoroughfare, yeah.
Right. So they can be there. They just can't block it to the point where somebody. can't walk through.
I guess we'll be able to tell what that'll be like on the first one,
We shall see.
this Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need a motion for that one as well.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this request? And all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, we're good. All right, thank you. I think we have all that. Oh, that's right here, the right picture. Oh, and there's information for if one wants to read about the statement of peace for 40 days of life, or life, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Here as well. Next item on the agenda would be, that's A, B, and C, that'd be the discussion of the emergency management plan. And really after some of the gaps that we've seen here, because we have an emergency management plan, I don't know if any of you've seen it, the LEMP, which I hadn't seen until today. It's for a large scale event, and it appears to me needs some updates, names and such, maybe some other things need to be added to it. Scott was talking about communication being the biggest tool. We see that there are also small and medium emergency events that we need to deal with. This is, in some ways, this is sort of an unprecedented event in Bellows Falls that we haven't had, at least in 20 years, an event where the power went out for more than a few hours, right? So, I mean, it happens in rural Rockingham under big storms, and but people in rural Rockingham, I think, some of them at least, are better prepared to deal with longer term than we are in the village, as we rely very much upon the municipality that way. I think we need to discuss it. I think communication is an immense tool that needs to be dealt with. And I know there are some people here in the public that wanted to speak on the subject. But I'd like the opportunity for the board to discuss the same thing. I think we need to commit some things. Perhaps we need to commit some ARPA dollars to advancing this process, because the world has changed. Our new normal is more storms and longer days out of power. Anyone want to start that conversation here? Go ahead.
I know the guys and gals have manned the different fire stations throughout the area, that there was a request from mutual aid. And I spoke with the manager on Tuesday to see what we were doing for Tuesday evening, but I know in the past, having been on both boards, we talked at some point, at some length about a generator for this building. The town's pretty much allocated all the funds that they've had in reference to the ARPA. But I would like to think that if, we work hand in hand at times with the town, we've borrowed money from the town. So I think we ought to look into an exploratory or check to see what it would do to put a generator here for this building, for the municipal building for town hall.
I understand from Sean that there is a large scale generator at the public safety building, and then there is another generator at the Rockingham Fire Department.
Right.
But I asked him, are you prepared to have the community there? And he said, no. The elevator is a problem. The actual space upstairs on the second floor isn't that big.
No.
I mean, it looks like inside the fire department, right? So,
Well, I think it's, that third floor is really big.
is it?
Yeah.
I guess I haven't been up on the third
Oh,
floor.
wow.
But could we house,
In the front, you've got this huge lounge that's a dog leg to the right. And then in the back, you've got the big meeting room, community room. There's oodles of space.
On our
there.
fire department?
Yeah,
Okay, but we're currently, what's the status of the elevator at the fire department?
not functional, right?
No.
Okay.
And according to the most recent conversation we had with the people that installed it, they don't make parts for it anymore. It's so
Right.
obsolete.
So we're looking at something like
a full replacement.
150 or 1,000 or more.
It's in the
dollars.
$120,000 to $150,000 range. to
I've
replace.
mentioned that on my list of what I thought we ought to do with some of the ARPA funds, but regardless of the two fire departments, this is town hall, this is a government building, our municipal building for both town and village. We certainly have the capacity, whether it be second, third, or first floor with the theater.
This is a bomb shelter. I think that
Yeah.
sign's still outside, right? It's a bomb shelter.
You know, I know, at the last town meeting, that won't mention any names.
Whatever that means, yes.
Whatever that means.
Yeah,
There was a lot of
whatever that means.
discussion, we also pay town tax and this too, but, we have some monies where we can make a contribution that's gonna benefit people down the road in the long run and in the future, and I think an investment by this board with the funds is appropriate.
Jake, you had something?
Well, yeah, I think I'm not opining on Stefan's suggestion here, but I think we're sort of, I think he jumped to the middle of a discussion here. And I think the question is, obviously, we're all reacting to the events of this past Tuesday. And I think we don't want knee-jerk reaction to things. We want something to be done systematically and make sense. But I think I know when I was sitting by the fire, fortunately I've got a fireplace, with a glass of wine, reflecting. My biggest concern was people that were alone in the dark, and who was checking on them. You know, we wanted to call a couple of people, even older than me.
Response, yes.
And we couldn't because they don't have cell phones, and obviously the electricity is critical to internet and phone, landline phone. And so I think my thoughts were, first of all, there ought to be a system whereby we are able to contact people, whether there's people that actually drive to people's houses, or if they have cell phones, then we'd have that information. But there should be a mechanism in place to make sure that people are safe. And in order to do that, you'd have to have a process whereby you reached out to people and somehow made the list of people that wanted to be contacted.
So there's that, we're working at the communication tool. Our police department does welfare checks, but apparently, I don't know that they did that during this period because we have people who've been out of power for 3 days.
Right.
So
And the
that's a
welfare-
gap. Yeah.
And I don't know, I know they do welfare checks, but I'm not sure if it's systematic with,
I don't either.
you know, or how it's
Or
done.
just by phone call.
Or whether really it's the police department that needs to be doing this. I think that was my biggest concern was, you know, making sure that people are safe.
Right.
In a time like this past Tuesday. So,
Well, in other
Anyway.
places I've worked, we had a system called Are You Okay? And it was mostly for seniors, and what it was an automated calling system. It would require somebody to return a call every day, and if they didn't, then there would be somebody automatically sent for a welfare check specifically. And people have to sign up for it. It's not, it wasn't a mandatory thing, it was a voluntary thing, but it worked pretty well in situations like this.
And there's still gonna be gaps, but I mean, because there are people who have cell phones, but can't charge them and then they run out, or their landline, but who was talking about that, Alyssa? That she has hers on a battery kind of thing, and that battery on her phone, her landline, and if it runs out, then she has no phone. So but we can capture 90% of our community with some communication tool, we're better off.
Yeah.
And we also still need people with feet on the ground, whether it's our fire department or police department. But there are at-risk people in our community who for 3 days have not had power, and I don't know if 100% have come back on, and that's just the village, not even looking at the rest of rural Rockingham, which we should, because if it benefits us, it'll benefit them as well.
because that's the other thing is that this needs to be a town-wide effort. It's not just Bellows Falls.
And I want to continue that communication with our next joint board meeting would make sense too. So that we could do that, because what are we waiting for? It seems like every time we have an emergency, whether it was Irene or whatever, we get all charged up and then everybody kind of goes to sleep. This plan here is from 2019. And I asked Sean, I said, well, where's the procedures? This is a plan, but it has no procedures in place, so you don't know who does what when.
It's a state requirement, all it really is contact.
Yeah, so really, you need internal documents that say, you're going to do this. This department's gonna check on all the people. This person's gonna make sure that all the phone communication is taken care of, or the robocalls, or whatever we're gonna do.
Right.
But there's nothing like that here. At this point, there's still gaps in the system, and because nothing big has happened for a while, we don't talk about it anymore, and we don't promote it, we don't put our effort into it to make sure that when it happens again, we're ready, which is clearly still not ready for an emergency. I want to make sure you guys have a chance to speak before I look to the people in the audience, because I know they want to say something. Anything from you two?
Yeah, I'm not, it's not, I think knee jerk, that's not from me, because I've mentioned this generator system numerous times, specifically when we had them, we were changing the pump houses and changing the generators out to pump houses. So I'm not saying that's what you're inferring, but what I'm saying now is we have funds available. And this is a perfect example why we probably should have had something in place, at least at this facility, to be able to power the lights, power the furnace, and do the telephone system. That way, in the event we ever had to utilize this building in a type of an event or an emergency, we can do that.
But that would have to be the result of a plan.
Right, exactly.
In other
Well,
words,
there's
if
a
the
plan, the
If
basic
the
plan
plan
here.
said the focal point is the town hall, well then
Right.
yes.
Yes, but right now it
But I don't-
says it's
we
the
don't have
high
a plan,
school,
so.
it's the high school, it's Saxons River, in the large scale emergency. It's Brattleboro High School.
Well, I'm saying regardless of where it is.
Yeah.
This is a municipal building that serves both the village of Saxons River, the village of Bellows Falls, and the town of Rockingham. You would expect that, I mean, I've been doing enough municipal buildings through my sales bit. They've got generators. Evidently, they've allocated the money, or they've got grants, or combination of vice versa, but this event does highlight probably why we ought to have something here. I know it costs money. I know it's a town building, but like I say, we're the same community.
We have to have something somewhere.
Yeah, we should.
Somewhere else.
Sean says we have a giant one at the fire station, but we're not prepared to take people.
Right.
So then there's still something wrong.
I'm not saying take one from any place. I'm saying get a quote for a new one, what it would wire into here for power kicked out. At least if it would have enough generation to power the phone system, the heating system, and the lights,
But it might, I guess my sense is that it might not be that a generator's here, it might be a generator somewhere else within the community for where we can accommodate. This might be the best place
Well,
to accommodate the most people, but it might.
I think the high school has a generator, but what I'm saying, this building, regardless of the type of event, this building should have some type of generator to keep it open for business.
The high school may have a generator, but it's school in session, so no one was using that as a warming shelter. Chroma was offering a warming shelter.
Yeah, well, it's very, very nice
Didn't
and
have
formal, but I'm saying,
Brattleboro's using theirs for their town.
you
Are
know,
they?
Yeah, so they-
what do you do in the middle of the summer
Good.
when you have Irene? You know,
No,
you
no,
don't
you
need a
can-
warming shelter, but
Yeah.
you gotta keep government open.
All right, let's move on to.
I think that, what this points to is there needs to be a committee, it needs to be townwide. We can't rely upon just municipal employees and, to be responding to these things, because they're gonna be making sure the roads are clear to get, emergency vehicles where they need to be, and then we need another tier of response that's gonna be, neighborhood,
Right.
response rather than
One second,
municipal.
so it's like.
Have somebody else here who wants to speak.
And Wade, and I should probably start with the people in the room, but Wade, go ahead.
I'll just keep it brief, but I think that all of you are a little bit off base. I think certainly there's gaps in the plan that could be tweaked and upgraded and relooked at, reviewed, made better. There's a heck of a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that people don't know about, and I'm part of that, like everybody else that's out there. So that's one thing. So yeah, the other thing is, we're talking about two different things, an emergency operations center
Mhm.
and a warming shelter, two totally,
Yes, there are different pieces of
Different
the
pieces.
plan. Yes, I know, I get it.
in the plan, basically this plan addresses, even though it's 2019,
Uh-huh.
this addresses a lot of the questions that you're talking about.
It points them out and gives names to them, yes.
Yes. So should there be policies for notifying or some type of procedures for checking on citizens that are in need when we're out of power for 3 days? Probably. And there's probably some other things we could do too as well to make it a little better than it is. But to say that we're not prepared, I don't agree with you on that. I think that we are prepared for a lot of things. quite frankly. The other thing I think is the manager already mentioned that at some point you were gonna have a after incident
Yeah.
review with the department heads to say, okay, let's brainstorm this, what went well, what didn't.
Yep.
To me, let that happen and then report back and say, okay, this is what we're thinking, this is what we found out, this is what worked great. Because there were a lot, you know, quite honestly, we're talking about the things that didn't happen or maybe, and thankfully, maybe they didn't have to happen to this extent. But there were a lot of good things that happened that people don't even know about. I can guarantee you that
And I appreciate,
over the last 72 hours. And they're gonna go unheard, and that's fine, that's just what we do. I mean, it's
Yeah.
part of what we do, and we don't look for the glory.
no,
and
it's the people
and
who
we move
are.
on to the next thing. So I think that we should let the manager do his part with the department heads, come up with a list of priorities, things we can do better. Certainly, I agree with some of the things you mentioned. I don't agree with trustee Golick that this should be an EOC or a emergency shelter.
Well, I didn't say that, point of order, I didn't say that, what I got was I mentioned before. Generator, and I'm not talking anything to do with
Okay.
the emergency operations center or anything, this building and just in general ought to have one.
Okay, so that's a totally separate.
Okay, that's separate.
Yeah.
Okay,
So yeah, that my thought is let the manager do his thing with the department heads after the dust settles here and proceed from there and, you know, we can always amend this plan that we have, as needed. That's
Can
all
you
I
send
got.
us a copy of the plan?
Sean did to me too, I can always forward it.
I will send a comment in, but.
Yes, just email it.
I'm simply
That's all I
pointing out that there were still some gaps in it, and that, as Sean had pointed out to me, this is really intended for a major event.
Right.
This is a medium event,
Yeah.
or even maybe medium to small event, but the reality is there are people who are, and everyone cares about themselves, they should, right? They care about the gaps that they found.
And I can tell you this, just to take it once, I can tell you that not only this local fire department, but every other fire department in this whole area, at least that we can hear about, that we are familiar with, has done a hell of a lot of welfare checks over the last 3 days,
Okay.
without any phone system in place,
And-
without any, just because they were dispatched to go check on this one, go check on that one. Hey, we just got a call on this one, somebody's concerned, they're calling from Florida, can somebody go check on their mother, because she's been out of power. I mean, so there's been a whole list for every department in the area that have just done that, even without any system in place, so. I'm not saying it couldn't be improved upon, because it probably could with today's technology, but
That's great to hear that.
there's a lot of that has happened.
So after we're done with this today, what I would like to do is bring it to the joint board meeting in May.
Absolutely.
I hope we don't have another emergency in the meantime, and see what, simply saying, there are people who are here in the audience and on Zoom who'd like to speak about what their experiences were. So, who'd like to go first? Bonnie keeps putting her hand up, so yes, please go, Bonnie. And just speak up, please, because we're not at full steam, I think, here.
Sure. I've got two points to make. I think it's really lamentable that there was nothing on the town website during this emergency. The only way anybody ever knew that there was a warming shelter up at Cromer was through Facebook. And I think that is humiliating for this town. It's an easy site to update. I made it that way, so it's very, very easy. And it's just inexcusable that there weren't instructions, who to call, phone numbers. Do you need a ride to a warming shelter? Anything. When the pandemic first started, I was still in charge of the website. The whole homepage was full of instructions, where meals were, this, that, everything you could need to know, and I updated it twice and 3 times a day. There's no reason that can't be done during an emergency. And another thing I'd like to say, I don't know if you remember us talking about this, Deb, when we were drawing up the blighted property thing.
Nuisance ordinance, yeah.
Yeah. There was an idea that I brought up that we bopped around a little bit and didn't pursue. And that was in the village particularly, where it's all densely packed, to make a plan and, carve out neighborhoods perhaps a dozen, and seek community volunteers to be an ombudsman in each neighborhood for any kind of emergency, and also for blighted properties. If somebody's place is looking bad, stop by and say, do you need a hand here? If, you know, is anything your neighbors can do? Do you need your lawnmower broken or whatever? But it would be especially important during emergencies. There are people that live near me that I don't know. And when I walked my dog this morning, I heard generators going all down Center Street and West Street. These people still didn't have power. I did on 121. I understand Pine Street, most of Pine Street didn't get power until this afternoon. People's food is rotting. People are cold. They don't know what to do. If you have a laptop and it's charged, you could at least go to the town website, for God's sake, and find out some pertinent information. So that's my big beef here.
You can bring that back to your board too.
I sure will, yeah, you guys were meeting tonight, so I got my chance. So I would really like to encourage that idea of neighborhood ombudsmen. I think it would really be good, you know, if you were just in charge of, like, you know, 10, 15 houses, just go say, hi, I'm your neighborhood ombudsman, here's my phone number, here's my email. And know who's there. Is there somebody there in a wheelchair? Oh, okay. You know, and another thing we could do is make up placards for people who are disabled or vulnerable in some particular way, and just say, come down to town hall and get a placard, or call the clerk, we'll mail you a placard. In case of that emergency, it may not even be townwide, it might just be your personal emergency. You can put it on your door. So there are a couple of suggestions.
Thank you, Bonnie. Who'd like to be next?
I'm be glad to. Deb, you mentioned that, you know, the sort of the forecast, if you will, is to have, you know, more unusual weather events, and I believe that's true. And I just want to point out that in that cold snap that we had, whenever, you know, a month ago, I don't remember exactly when, but when it was, you know, very, very cold, I just sort of assumed that, you know, that there was some kind of, that would be covered by an emergency event. And I called the police department to say, you know, what's the plan for homeless people in town? And the police said, well, that's not anything they deal with. And I called our place and Park's place, and you know, I called every place I could think of and figured out there was no plan that I could find out about for homeless people in town. So I drove down to one place where I knew there were people staying, and I couldn't find anybody at that point. But I sure would hate to, you know, read in the paper that somebody froze to death in Bellows Falls because we all turned our backs. In terms of the idea of phone call and, you know, some kind of automatic phone call, Laurel, what is it that we get? It's a Vermont, is it a state system?
Vermont alert system.
Yeah, and I assume, but I'm not positive, but I assume Bellows Falls or Rockingham could just call that folks in Montpelier or wherever it is and say, put this message out, you know, the town hall is open, or, you know, Chroma has a warming shelter, you know, that I think we can put out information that would go to everybody who signed up for that in a certain zip code or however they do it. And to have, you know, just to be able to put out emergency information to go along with the website as well. But anybody with a cell phone who's signed up for that would get it. And we can encourage people to sign up for it. And it'll cover the big emergencies as well as the little ones. The whole thing about, you know, neighborhoods and neighbors looking out for each other, you know, I think in the old days, it would have just been neighbors. And now there's a way that I think the town and the village have a real role, because we're less organized as neighbors than we used to be. But I think people are willing to step forward and look out for each other, but they can use the impetus of whether it's what Bonnie was just talking about, suggesting that there's someone in each neighborhood, whatever the system is, the town can use, the town can give people a push in that direction, and I think people will respond. And I do want to say that in our neighborhood at the, we've got an email list of probably about 30 households in our neighborhood. And during that cold snap, there were people sending out, there was an email thread going out to about 30 households in our neighborhood, saying, our house is available. If somebody's furnace goes out in the middle of the night, you come to our house, the door's unlocked. People were sharing information and encouraging, if you've got a neighbor that's not on this list, go check on them. And so the neighborhoods really can be encouraged to look out for one another. And yes, the town and the village have a role in that. So, thanks.
Thank you. There's one other person in the room. Did you want to
There's
say
a couple.
before we go to the
Go
Zoom?
ahead. So I had a.
Oh,
pretty
sorry,
good-
Laura.
I had a pretty good rant on Facebook. I was pretty frustrated this morning when I found out that 95% of the town got power after 12 hours and we were still without power. No one knew we were out power. That was the problem. And then the people without power didn't know the rest of the town had power. So until I went to my neighbors and I drove downtown and I saw some things on Facebook. One of the issues that we have is we have an elderly population that still has phones that aren't dial phones, but they're phones with batteries, so they can't call out. So one of the things I'm recommending to the elderly is to buy a cheap flip phone for 40 bucks. But I talked to Sean McGinnis this morning after I ranted to Deb, she ranted to the town manager, I ranted on Facebook, called out names. I really thought that the warming shelter was bogus because it doesn't take animals. People are not gonna leave their home if they can't take their animals, so it was useless. And it was 4 miles away up at Chroma. I think Chroma did a nice job in offering it, but I really think what we need is eyes on. And I told Sean McGinnis that today. I think we need volunteers in neighborhoods that will look out for each other. Because no one here probably knew that that whole block from Pine to Henry Street Extension was out after you all got power. And now some of you may have been out without power as well, but no one knew that. And they didn't know you didn't know that. No, they didn't know you didn't know that. So when I talked to Sean today, after my rant to Deb and Facebook and town manager, he asked what could be done. What are we doing wrong? What should have happened? We've never experienced this before. We've only had literally 20 minutes of an electric outage or 2 hours. I was telling my new neighbor, don't worry, sit down, relax. Have that bottle of wine next to your fireplace. The electricity will come on in no time. It's okay, it's fine. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, it didn't. This was the first time in the village we have had no power for 2.5 days or whatever. And people were not used to that. But Sean told me he had no idea we were without power. He said, if I had known Pine Street was without power, I would have came to your door and I would have knocked on the car's door to see what was going on. I was the one with the 97-year-old neighbor that had to get up in the middle of the night and go down to the basement and put wood in the stove. Then he decided to start an old kerosene stove the next day. And I walked in, the house was reeking of kerosene that night. Nick from Famous Pizza came in and said, what are you doing? You gotta open the windows. They didn't even smell it. So my first thought was, I have this elderly man and woman here that don't even realize that they might be being, I don't know what happens when you got kerosene smell like that in your house, but I immediately go to carbon monoxide or whatever. So I'm being stupid about that, but they were working with the best resources they could, but no one like a fireman came and said, hey, Jim, can I help? What's going on? Because we didn't know. No one knew what was going on in that little block. The town manager didn't know, they didn't know, anyone knew. So the line of communication, we've got to get better with. We somehow have to figure out, and I think both of these two are right. We need some sort of local community, local neighborhood. Let's check on each other in times of emergency to start. I do think we need a committee, but I think that committee needs to be comprised of professional people that know how to create emergency contingency plans. Not just put it on the town manager and staff, but people that maybe are retired, like old planners from Brattleboro and old town managers and things like that, that are willing to come in and create a contingency plan for policies and procedures on these little nuances that we're gonna have. I talked to my oil provider. Everyone is using more electricity. We all have those, what do they call, the electric heat pumps. He put in a generator last year because he said the next time we've got an outage, there's gonna be a lot of usage and then the power outage is gonna be longer. I'm not quoting him because I'm probably misquoting him, but he actually put in a generator. So we have more people using more electricity. What happened over at Pine Street is the fuses went out. So when all the power came on at midnight, it surged through and blew the fuses. There's fuses hanging from telephone poles when you drive around there. All the guys did today, it was a 15-minute fix. They came, they took a bucket stick, they took the fuse, put it in, power was on 5 minutes. They didn't do it because all of Vermont was out, so they were like, you know, we'll get to you guys when we get to you guys. But what happened is we had so many people calling GMP. You called, the town manager finally called. I tried to get a Facebook stream to call GMP. We hounded them so badly that they just said, put us out of our misery, please. We'll come and take care of everything. But I talked to Sean today and he was nice enough to say, where did we go wrong? What can we do better? That plan that you have is for a Katrina event. We don't have these little nuances that are gonna happen in pockets. The other thing he said, we're a volunteer fire board. All of our men are working on the jobs. Tony James and staff is out dealing with heat issues. He was dealing with an issue in Springfield. Some other staffs, you know, so we don't have a group of firemen and women like we used to back in the day when we had 8 or 9 people hanging out up there that can go around knocking on doors.
Well, I know you would like to finish this, but I also understand that citizens who continue to call us because they don't know who to call all the time and calling emergency services, need a way to express that.
Yeah, but
So
the phones don't work, okay, and the internet doesn't work.
it's not the only, there's lots of phones working. We don't have a communication tool to
But
talk to people.
we've agreed that we're
Yes, we
gonna
have,
have the
but these citizens
manager.
can't get to express that. I understand.
We've
You
got
don't-
an
We have not
emergency
agreed to
plan,
anything.
and we've got an agenda that we gotta get to.
Yes, I know, and
budgets
you know what,
things like that.
I'm intruding on your glass of wine. Sorry about
No,
that.
it's not, this isn't about wine, this is about our
We
business.
we
that
typically
have.
take conversations during agenda items somewhere between 1 minute and 3 minutes
Okay,
of time.
all right.
And, that's.
This is the communication problem that we have right here. Okay,
Okay.
and the fire chief said he had few calls that they had to deal with.
Yeah, well, you know there's more. I
So
know.
thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Laura, did you need some time?
Sorry to intrude on your time.
Thank you.
Laurel Green, I live up on Brown Street. And before Scott came to town, we had the Let's Take Action Rockingham meetings where we set some priorities. And one of them ended up being Sustainable Rockingham, which is kind of petered out now because COVID happened and knocked the wind out of everything. But one of the suggestions that Scott had for us was to do the Blue Sky Days and talk about emergency preparedness in times when we don't need it. And we did a bunch of work and I learned a bunch of stuff, including there's a system in Vermont called CARE, Citizens Assistance Registry for Emergencies. And it's in association with 211 and 911 in Vermont and the Vermont Emergency Management System. And it's this voluntary sign-up sheet for people to be contacted when there's an emergency. And Sean said these get out of date so fast you couldn't believe it, but it's one method that we could use. And it has stuff like, I don't have transportation. If there was an emergency and I had to leave the area, or in this case, get to a warming shelter, I need a ride. I can ride in a car, a van. I use a wheelchair, I need a wheelchair van. I need a ride in an ambulance. I have specialized equipment that needs to be transported with me. I have a service animal. I'm deaf, hard of hearing, blind. I don't speak English. And I use oxygen, and I have to have a backup supply that will last for a certain amount of time. There's a system in place already to capture this information so that we can have it. We just have to get it out to the public. Every time I've tabled with Sustainable Rockingham, I've handed these out, and I mean, I shove them at people, but we could make that happen. My suggestion is, you know, the whole thing with town meeting, this room was packed. I think we could have a meeting like that monthly where we talk about, okay, what are we gonna do about emergency management? Not just have experts, that maybe was a good idea that she had, but the people in town who've been here a long time have ideas too. And the people who are moving in new are bringing in different ideas too. So we really need to talk to everybody. You know, doing the debrief, that's great. Let's do that, but let's make it a community conversation.
Is there still someone on Facebook, on Zoom? who wants to
Yes, they
speak?
have a hand up, so I don't know
If they
who
still
that
want.
is, but if you.
Yeah,
could
guys.
unmute-
Yeah, guys, it's Jamie Barrick, a Bryant Court. So obviously I'll keep this as short as I can. However, there's a lot been covered. So number one, from like an emergency center and everything in town hall, and a generator and everything like that. If we already have, you know, Rockingham Fire Department, Bellows Falls Fire Department, and the police, I think our town officials should be able to run an emergency center out of one of those to be able to stay in contact with other people versus adding a generator. I know that the town and village is also looking at, you know, reinforcing the roof at town hall, putting solar panels, do battery backup if we're into solar so much, and we'll be able to run the furnace and a little bit of light while we're doing that project. The other one with the emergency plan out there, what is the availability to the general public for that? Because what I'm hearing from the trustees tonight, a lot of them are just seeing it for the first time. And I understand it's been around 2019 that it came out. Is that posted on the website anywhere?
No, and it's a town emergency management plan.
No.
It's adopted,
It's been adopted by the town
right.
and
Well,
then through the state.
Well, and understand that all of us were aware of it, and shame on all of us, public and officials and everybody, for not really knowing what it pertained to, and only to a Katrina type event when, you know, we do live in Vermont. Scott, on your fact finding and your lessons learned and feedback that you get, I'd like to hear more in depth on GMP and their response to this. Because I had doctor's appointments in Connecticut today, and I drove down and back, and I saw no less than 350 bucket trucks coming back, you know, from Massachusetts and Connecticut. So where is the priority there, right? And and as far as the school, if they have a generator there, you know, I know other towns, villages, everywhere else that I've traveled, you know, they've been able to use a gymnasium even when school is, you know, in session or whatever, and you just make accommodations during an emergency. But I definitely would like to see a lot more public input and feedback on, you know, constructing this new emergency plan and communications drill. Because I know up here on the terrace, we were out for 14 hours. And if my neighbors 3 or 4 houses down the road didn't have power, you know, I would hope that they would reach out and say, hey, we still don't have power. GMP has the website to report your outage, and they try to address it. They didn't do a very good job this time in this storm. However, I could see all the dots on the map right around Bryant Court with everybody that had reported. So it's too bad that Pine Street and everybody was out for so long, but they do have an outage map. And if somebody sees the lights on at the next street over going, why don't I have lights? You know, but I would just like to see the emergency plan more available to everybody so we can all provide feedback. Thank you.
Great idea.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. There, anybody else? We're all set. Nope, looks like we're set. Okay, thank you very much for those who commented. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
For having me.
Yep, and we'll talk about it again in May.
Call on citizens.
Yes, yeah. Our next item on the agenda is the opioid distributors settlement paperwork.
So not to get confused, but this opioid settlement, we've had now one with the manufacturer, one with one national distributor. Now, this is a third settlement, which lists specific organizations that were also participants. So we have registered, and so we will let you know what our distribution is from this additional 5 locations.
Is this a specific municipal allocation? Is that what it'll be?
Well, depending upon how many people, actually, because you have to affirmatively apply to be a party to the settlement, so. That's
We've done that.
We've done
We've
that.
opted.
So I filed for that. Then they will then figure out of all the people who filed, they break it down based on the money that's available. And, we get these $1,000 and $2,000 checks, so. You can see these numbers here look very impressive, billions, but when it breaks it down.
Yeah.
Comes down to life-changing money, but I just want to give you a heads up, it's a third source of the same basic settlement.
Right, I'm part of the opioid settlement committee that they have, the state of Vermont with Dr. Levine and all that. And we're talking about how to distribute $10 million that the state has and what we'll be using it for. So we have a list of priorities and stuff, but this is separated from that. This is more local as opposed to the state's decision to do that. Okay, great. Anyone have anything else? Any questions for Scott on that moving forward? All right. Next item is the fire police department budget, operating budget, capital project, operating budget, I guess.
So I thought, right, so you should have in the 24 budget, as well as the 23 budget, and then the actual 22. So you should see those pages, and they are numbered, so they'll be, I think. So those are the new pages up through page 6. And then we do have behind that additional pages that were previously looked at when we did our water and some of our other things. We've made some other updates based on our previous conversations with that. And then we also have the budget status reports behind that as well. And then behind that, there was a handout with the capital equipment fund that really sort of goes through some of the projects, and we'll talk in more detail about what was actually spent with the PD and some things that we still have to do. So overall, based on the budget request, there hasn't been any significant changes. We're still asking for, we're staffing for, if we were fully staffed in our PD, we'd have 6 full-time and 1 chief. We're still not there. We had more interviews this week. We have 2 candidates we're hoping to vet further. One's potential full-time, one's potential part-time, so we're getting at least treading water, not getting ahead or gaining, but at least we're treading water in that respect. So as you can see, the numbers comparative year to year, just looking at what we're looking at, it's not a substantial change, and there are no programmatic changes that we're looking to do in this budget specifically. So it's pretty much a status quo budget. We've again, just used that baseline of 6 officers, 6 full-time officers and 1 chief to work out these base numbers. And there's really, the only other thing we talked about that I think that the board is interested in is where are we putting the money, as we had talked about, for vehicles, because we had spent a lot of time and energy making sure that police vehicles were funded. So if you notice on page 6, the last page, all the way to the last items, there was transfers. So under the capital expenditures items, there were transfers for various projects, the 70,000, and we'll talk about what's involved in that. That was a board decision during the budget year last year. The 25,000, which you see for police vehicles listed there in the line item. And then new item to start The only thing that was realistically new from budget to budget was the fire chief's vehicle to start accruing some money, kind of like we do in the water department, for a vehicle replacement fund for the chief's vehicle, which is what you see for the 7,000. So of that 70,000 that you had approved, we had talked about the server project, which was the big thing with the cameras, and we were going to get money back from the grant from the passive. And Axon for the entire year was not available or eligible to get us the cameras. I just got an email last week from them saying they now have inventory and are scheduling for May for projects that were requested a year ago. So that should tell you where we are in the supply chain. So I included just in there just what we had asked for previously. I'm going to still pursue the grant reimbursement because we're in a new year for passive, but we can still apply for the money. So when we're all said and done in this current year, I'm hoping that we can get them out here in May, get the new cameras installed, then finally get everything off the old system completely. So the new system would be going to the cloud. If you remember, we talked about that. It would not be going to a server. And then we would have the availability to go on the old server. And if we needed to pull data for cases or other particular items that are on there, we'd be able to use that PC to go in there and basically do that. So that would create, at least then the next phase of capital work that we need to do. And one of the reasons I gave you a list of the age of various equipment, because if you notice that on one of our police servers that isn't that old, quite frankly. We bought it in 2016. It's got a 2012 Microsoft operating system, but Microsoft has informed us that they're no longer supporting that, so we're going to have to migrate off of that server in order to continue with some of the items that are on there. And so that'll be a next phase of this project once we get the camera portion complete. The fear is when they stop supporting the software, what ends up happening is there are none of the fixes available for things like cybersecurity or any kinds of patches for any kind of problem. So that's where people then can access your system and create all sorts of problems. And we certainly don't want to have a police department where we're vulnerable to have some kind of cyber issue in the PD. So that's something that we're going to have to address in this cycle in order to get rid of that 2016 server. So that'll be one of the items that we'll be working on after we get the camera system up and running. The other money that we had spent with that 70,000, if you remember, we did a mini split for some of the building for heating in that building. So that was about a $20,000 project. We also spent money on our paving and that door that we put into the side of the building so we could access that parking lot. So that was roughly, I think, another 30,000 or so. So we still have some of that money left that we were going to then use to finish the gutters and roof project. We were going to put ice dams, some gutters on the sides of the building where we were having the penetration into the basement, into the which is now, we sealed all that and that stopped leaking. But now we just want to make sure that we deal with the runoff off the roof so we don't have a problem in the future. And then that money will basically be spent. Projects that are still upcoming that we still have to go through. We got the first round of pricing on the Sally Port from our architects. It came in at roughly 800,000. This is estimate for construction. That has a pretty large contingency and some other things in there that we figured we could knock that project down to closer to 600,000, which is more than the 400,000 that we had put into to accommodate ARPA funding. So Dave and Sean and I will work with them to scale that down and see if there's a way we can get it closer to that $400,000 to $500,000 range, which is, I think, where we were looking to get the Sally Port funded. The dispatch is at a point where we have to do some major upgrades, and this is something that we're going to need to speak with, how do we want to approach that? Because the types of things that we might want to do might require a different console than what we currently use for our dispatch. Things like these automated call systems. You know, they're great features, but when you do that, you tie up all of your outgoing phone lines until those phone calls are completed. So it might require some new infrastructure at the PD in order to accommodate those kinds of systems. They're great, they work well, but again, there'll have to be some upgrades. Our console that's in the dispatching now is another one that's past useful life, and we're gonna have to make some upgrades to it in order to keep it operational. I don't have those numbers yet, so we just started working on that project. And then I think the other thing that we talked about, and we just touched on it briefly earlier, was the lift itself. The board had put roughly, I think, $30,000 into that to think we could repair it. We brought in multiple contractors. Nope. It's a Lula lift.
The
So,
elevator.
Oh,
yeah, so it's basically a lift system in the building. And we need it for handicap accessibility to really make that, if we're gonna make it public space in any way, shape or form, that's gotta be right.
right, you need to have it.
Ours is so old, it can't be repaired. And there are no parts and anything available to try to even make it operational. So the last person that was in basically said, you gotta buy a new system and just take this old system out. And the new system's about $150,000.
280, I think. That's
So-
what John said, but that means the $30,000 would go towards that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think the goal there is to go and look and see if we can get some ADA grant money to make the building accessible. If we are going to do something to make it accessible to the public, we're gonna have to do ADA updates to the bathrooms, because the bathrooms aren't ADA compliant. And God help us if you want to allow pets, because I don't know how you can do sheltering with animals. Not in that kind of space. I just don't know how you do it. Now, I understand, I love my pets too, but I just don't know how you can have that, you know, make
You have to
that
have a
work.
separate area for them. I mean, that's what you wind up with.
There's one listed on the plan that says they take pets
Yes, there it is.
on the current plan.
Yeah, the emergency plan, which we didn't know what it looked like, so, but yeah.
So
The,
those are all considerations, right? So we still have investments to be made in that building, and decisions that we talk about here might impact some of the scale of what we're trying to do.
Yep.
the thing that confuses me, if you're on page 6, kind of, we'll start at the back.
Yeah.
Is, you know, I thought that when we did the budget this past year, we did more than the 25,000 for the police or capital projects, maybe not.
For the vehicles specifically, Jigs, or for other capital?
Other stuff, or I guess those were articles.
Well, those were specific items that the board approved. That 70,000 was a transfer, so it's a budget transfer that you approved after.
But you see that, we had 25 in for the police vehicle. Did you
Right,
lump
which
it
is
all
what-
into the 70?
No, that's a separate line. The
So
25.
this says, we didn't reserve anything for.
Well, don't, we,
In the, what,
in
2022?
In 22.
well, we spent it. Remember, we ordered a.
Yeah, but it would show. Scott,
So-
it would show as an
expense.
item.
Yeah, right. We just, I think what we did, Jigs, is we paid that out of that same, because the board had changed. We were originally gonna put in 20, and then we talked about 30, then we decided on 25.
Yeah.
We just transferred the 25.
Yeah,
And then you have the 25 in for the fiscal year 23 budget, and then 25 in for the fiscal year 24 budget.
yeah, but he was wanting more to 22, but
So you're looking back to 22
see, we didn't expand
What
it.
I'm saying is
under the actual.
we are accounting for articles and reserves
Mhm.
are all over the place. For example, if you look back at the water fund and the sewer fund, we allocate 7,000 per vehicle.
Correct.
One of them is in the capital line, the other one's in the equipment line. So I mean, we've got to have, Alyssa,
They're not consolidated, so they all in one.
Yeah, so that we can see all of them, you know, obviously, the two funds are separate,
Correct.
but you passed out this statement of capital and equipment fund,
Right, which is,
okay?
Right.
Now,
Yep.
so it shows fund balance, whatever 516 is. 51600 is, it says fund balance, $2,500. Then it says building improvement, 45,000. And then police equipment, 22,500. And then below it, it says minus 13,000. Okay, so my question is, what's our balance in the various funds? Do we have a police vehicle fund, right?
yes,
We're gonna start having a fire department vehicle fund,
which will be separate, right? It will not be a 516, correct?
okay? Then it would be what? Building improvement fund. Okay, so what I'd like to see is apparently the balance as of this date is $56,704.
Correct.
We know there's nothing in the fire.
No, that's a
Okay.
new number. The 7,000 is a request. That's a brand new request.
We don't know if this minus 13 has anything to do with the police equipment.
It's only police, yes.
Oh, it's all.
It's the building, Jigs. This is all capital and equipment for the building itself. So these are projects that we were working on the building.
But you hear what I'm saying? You look at these accounts, Scott, and you can't figure out what's what.
Right.
I'm saying as of March 13th, what was in the building fund? What was in the police vehicle fund? I think those are the only two funds that we have. We know that the balance is 56,704,
Right.
but the way it's displayed here, you can't tell which is which.
Right,
Right,
there,
so-
This,
yeah, the
so
breakout's different.
So in fiscal year 23, when we started in the 516 fund, Jigs, we had $31,704.70 in building improvements, and we had $22,501.40 in vehicle. So that's your 56,704.70.
sorry, what is that again? The police was what? 20,
The vehicle was 22,501.40,
22,
501.40, and the building improvement balance was 31,704.70.
on the second sheet.
It's on the second sheet.
Correct.
Oh, it's on the second sheet.
Yeah,
So the two of those combined give you your 56,704.70. I know it's confusing, because we created some of these accounts as we were cleaning up with the auditors, we created some new accounts, so that's why the history is a little bit convoluted. Because then we had to move stuff that was charged into those accounts, so it's not clean, and it should be clean going forward.
Okay.
So I do understand the confusion, because it took me a while to understand it too.
And this includes all 2023 transactions to the capital fund.
Yes.
Okay,
So if we were going to do any more projects in the current year,
Yeah.
we have $56,000 to do those
Right.
with.
well, obviously, we're not gonna buy another.
We're not gonna buy
vehicle,
another
so-
police
So
vehicle.
you've got 31,000.
In the building itself, I have 31,000.
31,000, that's it.
Right, but I'm not gonna buy a car.
no, but I'll sit there and be added to for another year.
Okay.
And out of that, we plan on doing that camera project that we talked about and finishing the roof drain and ice dams and all this.
Out of this,
Out of the
out of this
31.
31,000, yeah. Now, the budget, you've got 30,000 for a server.
That's the piece that I said, after we're done with the Axon cameras and with this failed server,
So we already paid for the Axon server?
Cameras,
no, we've not paid for the cameras yet or the install. That's the 16,637.
okay.
Do we have it reserved?
That's part of the 31,000. And again, if Axon comes in May, which they're telling me they're going to do, I can charge it within this budget year.
Okay.
My honest opinion, they're full of crap and we won't see them in May, but I have to go by
Let's
what
get
they
a
tell
target,
me.
some target date somewhere.
At least we got.
It's over a year since we ordered this equipment. It's really
We're
outrageous.
making appointments now for.
Yeah, for stuff that was ordered a year ago.
There's still work to do on the door that was cut in the brick wall.
There's a little bit of work to do there. We have to do some electronic work there
And then trimming it out or?
and a little bit of trim work.
So the budget calls for 30,000 for servers
Yes,
and then the 7 and the 25.
correct.
Can we go back to the beginning?
Back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So that was convoluted.
Page one.
We're back to page 1 of 1 on the budget.
Just a couple of observations. I really compliment you and Alyssa for and the department heads for the budget. It's so much easier to go through now. But, as a trustee, I must say, I am disappointed with the revenue from the police department. I think we hopefully, we put in what appears to me a meager, $5,000 and we aren't anywhere, close to it. And, so we're gonna cut it back, but I'm really disappointed that.
Well, I think it's a true reflection, Diggs, of just the turnover and the lack of staffing. Because I can't bring in, we lost another position, and so we're still trying to get another person full-time to fill that position.
Yeah.
Well, of
So
course,
it's frustrating.
we budgeted revenue for the rental housing regulation,
That would definitely.
and that's not
Right.
started yet.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
yeah,
big
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
And it never happened, because
No,
now
it
we're
never
still
happened.
waiting on the MOU and all that other stuff.
Right.
And finishing the ordinance again,
Right,
and then whatever the state decides to throw it in the clunker. So,
if and when the state decides.
We got,
But yes, that's
We
a
got
gap
it.
in our revenue.
Yeah,
apparently we got a $200 increase in last year's budget for the health officer. And we're level funding that. And if
oh, yeah.
this is the chief's time that he devotes to this
Correct,
kind of thing, and
because he is now,
if that's fair, that's fair, but if it's not, it would seem to me that ought to be.
we left it basically alone because until we get into the rental housing, I don't know what his time is realistically gonna be.
Well, I mean, he's already doing health officer work now
He's doing
alone.
some now,
There's no ZA, so,
right, but I can charge the majority of that back against the town.
yeah, so then that
That's
would
where it
increase the
realistically
revenue.
should be charged.
Oh,
And that's
okay.
where it is being charged.
So you're charging into it.
So we're
I'm keeping
giving
the
them,
village basically static.
we're giving his
Village-
normal input, but
Correct.
there'll probably be more than that this year.
Right.
Because of
Yes.
the change.
Okay, all right, that's all I had for
Okay,
page 1.
Okay, who'd like to go next on budget? Okay. So if we're gonna add, what I looked at is the end totals of what we anticipated for budget this year, which is
Wait a
at
minute, I
least,
got a couple- I got
what,
some more.
20,000 more than we had, so.
I noticed you put 2,500 in for the legal, for the union
What page do you
negotiation.
want? You want one?
It's on page 2.
Okay.
At the bottom,
that was a wild guess, just because I don't know where we're gonna end up.
because,
And so,
Ray used to sit in and negotiate and do all that kind of stuff.
Not now.
right, we're
And
not
so-
gonna bring him in until we get to a point where we think we want to have him come, and we'll talk a little bit
Hey,
about
Cuda, yeah.
right,
Okay,
how that might work, but at the moment, I don't think we need it.
okay.
No,
Early stages.
review of the contract will probably be the biggest piece, once we settle on.
Yeah.
As long as we're not doing arbitration process and,
Yeah.
let's hope that we don't have to go through arbitration. I think we can
Should be good.
keep that.
Okay. The other, on page 3, we moved the EFGDA up to 10,000.
He put the number in there that we've been talking about.
Correct. That was the
Still-
request, and that, since it was a
Yeah.
request, I put it in as a budget. But again, it's the board's
Decision, yeah.
decision,
Right. And,
just a working number.
I think we certainly we certainly want to encourage the downtown.
The downtown area,
business.
yep, we do,
We do want to encourage it. So
yes,
I
we
think-
do.
I think we ought to just,
And I
Shut
think
up.
we've had several turnovers on the VIPTA director, because they only fund a part-time position, and we're trying to keep this stuff going to attract more businesses in the community, so, and they haven't had an increase in some time.
8 years, you said.
Yeah, so it would
Years,
make
8.
sense just for the normal doc, like when they tell you that, oh, they got $75,000 in 1920. Okay, what's that worth in 21st century dollars?
Yeah.
It's significantly more, and their costs are significantly higher, so.
then further down into the building, we got 30,000 budgeted for maintenance and repairs. Are you thinking of any articles?
It depends, again, if we do something specific on the Sally Port.
Because that's a significant
Correct.
budget item.
And that's something else.
I think for somebody like myself that has no concept of what a Sally Port is or whatever, but I do have an appreciation for how expensive things are, but
It's a glorified garage.
Yeah, that's what I thought you would.
So basically, it's a glorified garage that you can park 2 vehicles in, and the goal of it is twofold. First of all,
apparently it's heated.
it's heated, but not heated to a livable, it's just heated to a vehicle standard, right? Above freezing, so the cars are out of the cold and not having to idle. And really,
Are they talking about, brick to match the brick building and those kind
it'll
of?
be a split block with a facade on it to match what the brick looks like, not full brick. Full brick's expensive. So we're looking at the cheapest materials we can find. And it's basically an automatic garage door, some modifications for the exhaust systems, a drain in the floor, so any slop that comes off in the winter.
What does everybody think about? Forget ARPA. And
Bond for that?
treat this as a one-time raise and appropriate as an article.
It's a big number to go out and ask people for as an article.
It's how many pennies on the dollar, I think it's, what is it, 27,000 per penny?
I think
in the
it's
village?
close to that.
Like maybe 28. So
Yeah,
think about that, how many pennies is gonna raise
Well,
taxes?
yeah,
That's ding ding, that's a lot.
right. And I think particularly where we were entertained with the discussion of town policing and our select boards in their wisdom, brought that out. And it was interesting to me that the people in Rockingham, Saxon River that were there many, many years ago that didn't want to spend any money. There's a lot of new people in those hills. And like the guy that said, if I dial 911, nobody's gonna answer. Well, nobody's gonna answer at the Bellows Falls Police Department, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But- So it just seems as though, if, for us to tackle Sallyport, when there's this issue of town policing.
Yeah.
I think you're premature
I think
yourself.
it's not the time.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
I absolutely.
Yeah, I just think I think it's a good idea.
But not now,
But
not
I
right this
think-
moment.
I think we've got to flush that out because, my feeling is if the select board is willing to take care of a couple of places in
In rural
Rockingham,
Rockingham,
well, then they can take care of us.
there you go, then they can
Oh.
build a Southport.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the conversation about policing isn't done. And
I think it
if
needs
that
to be on
changes,
our-
then,
There's a lot of conversations, right? The sheriff's got all this stuff that's going
Yeah.
on in the background. The last thing that I found that the boards looked at together jointly was 2010. So it's dramatically out of date.
yeah,
So,
clearly.
I don't know what the appetite is to engage in a more, I don't know. I mean, it's a decision that the boards really need to make.
Well, I don't usually get any phone calls from residents.
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, you guys say you get it, but I don't, get it. Once in a while. But I have heard from 3 or 4 people which is a ton.
For you, yeah.
That were outraged that the selectmen went to the sheriff.
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't they contact the Bellows Falls Police Department?
You heard Peter, he said in the past, we said no.
Well,
That's what they've said.
wherever he
But
was at.
realistically, for $6,000, like I said at the meeting here, what are you gonna get?
Well, you're not gonna get.
Right,
It's a token-
exactly.
it's a very
That's what I
token
think
price.
they
But
know.
our rate is lower than $60-something
But
an hour.
the point is,
Well,
they
we charge
were,
55 for special detail.
you know, we are the town of Rockingham. for
Yeah.
God's sakes.
Mhm.
And so anyway, I think it ought to be on our joint board.
I think that's a joint point.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the
It is.
Sally Port as a tangible item that, you know, we could use, but if we didn't have these funds available, I probably wouldn't have mentioned it very often.
Mm,
So, you know, it's.
Yeah,
Well, there are officer safety issues with prisoners. The
Right,
select
yeah.
board is a much more secure process for
Yeah.
handling.
How many prisoners are we getting through there?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we're getting more than you would think. Just the other day on election day, we were fighting some guy in the street on the moose because he was out of his mind.
oh, yeah.
So they had to secure him and wrestle him to the ground.
So I have two thoughts.
Doc handled that, sorry.
For just for what it's worth, I still support the building of a Sally Port. Because regardless of what happens, I think there should be one there. There should have been one there when the place was built.
Yeah.
My follow-up to that is, I am a little shocked at the price. I mean, even with the things, I didn't think it was gonna
Yeah.
be
It was a
$70,000,
little more, I
$100,000.
was a little shocked at it too.
So my thought was, and what made me think of this was last Friday, I was standing in the Sally Port at the Springfield Fire Station, Springfield Police Station. Theirs is one bay.
Yeah.
It's definitely not two bay. It's probably it's one big bay that can still only put one cruiser in.
Mhm.
And I was standing there looking at it and talking to the guy that I was with, and I thought, you know, even if we had to do one bay, this would be way better than what we've got. So my thought was, even if we had to relook at it to get the price down and end up with something like Springfield's got, it works, theirs works pretty well. He said they were pleased with it, and, you know, it was still kind of take care of the issue of being able to have a vehicle in there and officer safety. And, you know, he showed me the procedures and what they do when they bring somebody in, and it's night and day compared to what these guys have to do.
Right.
So I still support it. I think it's something that's
I
still
support it.
worthwhile.
I do support it. So.
But I would also be in favor of, you know, if we had to scale it down to only do one vehicle to save some money and still make it happen, that might be the way to go. I don't know. Just a thought.
Good thought.
And again, what made me think of that was I was in there last Friday and I was thinking,
Where is it? Cause I don't remember, is it right there in the front or is it in the
it's
back?
right on this, as you go by their police station, it's on the left side.
It's on the left side.
Yeah.
So like coming into Springfield, you
Yeah.
can see it on the,
Okay.
because I go by that.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I guess I didn't notice it when I was in there Friday, so.
So that was,
Well, I mean.
It might
where-
be, you
So
know,
where
an
are we on
option.
the conversation, at this point?
We haven't had a follow-up with the architects to really break down
yeah,
the construction estimate and look at what our alternatives are.
Yeah.
Cheaper materials, what else can we do to cut costs?
I'm concerned that the building itself has infrastructure issues that need to get dealt with.
That building will always have infrastructure.
Yeah.
issues.
It wasn't great built, sorry, architect, but
So
it's had issues since the eighties, I guess, when it was built.
Yeah,
it's a challenge.
okay.
So that doesn't answer the question of whether we think we're gonna put an article in a warning or not. At this point,
Well,
I'm not myself not in favor, and I think it's a little premature.
I hate to go to there. I would hate to go to the article route until I knew more.
Right.
Like what the other options might be, you know, plan A, B, C or whatever.
But we have to set it
I
by,
know.
we have to set our budget by end of this month, beginning of April 10?
I think we have one more meeting to kind of go through everything, which is the meeting of the 28th. Does that sound right? And I think we have one more meeting where we have to finalize it.
I mean, even if we had to collect more info and put it off for another year, that's still, but keep it in the pipeline.
Keeping it alive,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just find that it seems like it's a new priority that
we didn't know about it before.
suddenly it's a priority that when I talk to people in the community, they're like, what?
Right.
Like, do we
really need that?
Yeah.
What does that cost and why are we doing this? There's so many other.
Well, I think
things that could be taken care
it's
of.
surfaced because all of a sudden we have, $800 and something $1,000, but
Well, there's that too. I mean, I first initially, like you said, it's in its own way. It's not, yes, it's more than that, but a glorified garage. At first I thought our conversation was about chain link fencing with a tarp roof in order to protect vehicles, right? To keep them a little warmer, to keep them out of the rain, I mean, that's just a basic idea, but and then all of a sudden, boom, now it's a very expensive heated building.
Yeah, and then from the public safety standpoint, if you have a prisoner that's, I mean, once they're contained and in the vehicle, what's happened in the past if they're high risk, is there an option? You take them to Springfield, you take them to, or is there an agreement, or is there not such an agreement?
Well, we have to take them here first and process them, and then we take.
Do we have a cell here? I didn't even know that.
We have a holding area with an interview room. It's accessible, and it'd be accessible from the doorway, from a sally port. A secured way to process prisoners. Right now, they come outside, walk around outside, walk through a door, walk through the building, and then walk into the back to get into the whole stuff. It's great if somebody's cooperating and is, lovely and
So could there just be a
working with
different,
you. Not everybody that we
like-
present is lovely and cooperative.
And we're not allowed to use dart guns on them.
but is there a way to
Things have
get more
changed in
direct
that
access
respect.
to that cell? I mean, they're getting in the car, they're handcuffed, and then they're handcuffed if they're secured in the vehicle, locked to something in the vehicle.
Depends on what the situation is, but more often than not, they are secured in the vehicle. And then there are places, once they're in the building, that they also are secured.
Okay, the side door is closer to the cell, is that what you're saying? Okay, so better than going through the front of the building, which
Correct.
is what they typically do.
Or the side.
Okay,
Or the-
now they can use the side. Okay, the side door, but that's on that side, and the other sally port door is on the left side.
But the Sally Port, if it's even a small scale one, is still designed like Springfield's to, not only get your prisoner or your person under control and in there, but it functions as other things as far as evidence, proper procedure for evidence and transfer and, all that, many other things too, but.
Okay, page 4. Just a comment. The pension expense usually reflects developments in the market. And not the Beamers, but the pension one, we show an increase there.
Right.
It could be spot on, based on what's happening with the market. It might be high, but,
And don't forget also, they look at, our population and then they do the accurate, the calculations.
right, I mean, if there were.
They tell us the number.
Correct.
As far as retirements are concerned in the fire department, this is under the fire department.
Right.
The next retirement from the fire department will be the chief. But,
This covers, this card cover old.
This covers
That's
retired,
the system.
people that are retired getting pension.
That's the old system, yes.
Okay.
And
Previous,
then the Beamers is for deposits for current employees. So primarily the chief.
The chief, yeah.
The other comment was under fire equipment, we've got 15,000 again. I listened to the reports from the fire committee and stuff like that, but I'm not sure what we've got for equipment that's not being bought by the town. So I put a question on that as to what that's,
Oh, yeah.
what that's for.
in a lot of cases,
Right.
if you notice, that line is for new equipment, and it's more for turnout gear, people that are new to the department. If you're gonna turn somebody out new, that's a volunteer, by the time I get him in his full, from his boots to his helmet, you're into what, 5,000?
So that's what that does.
That would be a
The
add.
town committee doesn't do.
The fire committee doesn't use, the turnout gear is not included
And
as
that's
one of those things.
Sometimes it has been in grants, we've been able to sometimes get grants to do it, but not always. So that really is what that's for.
That's true. Okay.
And miscellaneous other things. It's not just turnout gear. I don't want you to think it's one.
Tanks and stuff like that. Honestly.
And that's all I have.
Okay, anyone else? I just wanted to just quickly touch, do we have a contract on the 66 Atkinson Street property at this point?
We are waiting on a follow-up for, cleanup on what the contamination was found, so we had requested funds from Wyndham Regional. I have not heard yet
Okay,
on the funding for that.
This is
that's the proposed garden
the garden.
where the Atkinson.
Right.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything else?
I had a question on the budget.
Yep.
Going back to page 3.
We're on
So,
fire again,
pardon,
are we on fire again?
police and building, fire, yeah, police and fire building.
Yes, okay, gotcha.
Very first line, janitorial services. It went from 0 to 5,800.
That was a mistake.
Just a mistake.
0 was a mistake.
It was not,
It's for-
put in the prior year's budget properly.
We didn't, so we did budget something for janitorial services.
Yes, we've
Okay.
always had
We've
some,
used $4,010 so far.
correct.
Although I have to
That was
say,
the actual.
that's for the whole building, right? Police and fire. Okay, it used to be everybody cleaned their own stuff.
Well, it's mainly for,
Mostly.
Police, yeah, I know.
the labor part is mainly police.
Right,
Isn't the labor in that
Yeah.
too?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
mostly the police.
And then, so that got, we did talk about that. It got overlooked or something, right? last
Yeah.
year?
They got
Yeah.
overlooked.
Yeah.
It was just not programmed properly.
So is that a reasonable amount?
Well, we've spent 4,000 to date
Yep,
as of March 9th.
and we have
For
still 3 months
janitorial
left to go,
Right,
3.5 months left to go.
And we've got, well, we don't have anything in the budget, but we,
and part of that was also mold remediation. If you remember, we were
Was that last year?
mold out of the evidence room.
The 4120?
Right, so there was some of that.
So that was
as
in
well.
there.
So that's there, but a normal year, like this current one, is gonna run over, get probably closer to $5,000.
Probably.
Is that just because rates went up?
A little bit of rates went up.
right, materials. So 5,800 is probably not a bad one.
It's probably right about right.
And I had another question on the rubbish removal, but I guess when you really break that down per week, that's like $20 a week, right? Rough figure.
Yeah, it's
So it's,
Yeah,
okay. Alright,
just that little, 3-yard dumpster. I mean, it's not that big,
yeah, it's not, it's
Yeah.
a smaller one.
right?
That's all I have.
oh, my only complaint about some of the stuff around town hall, and that, you know, and the fire department, police, is why do we drink our own water? Why are we using a bottled water system? I say that because there are faucets in all of these buildings, and we don't drink the water that we pay so dearly to protect. And I bring that up all the time, nobody wants to drink the water. I drink the water,
I drink the water at home.
yeah, good for you, but why are we paying for bottled water from somebody's tap somewhere else?
Well,
You
how
know,
are we getting
instead
in grievance?
Oh, my God,
Jesus Christ. I'm
to
telling
drink
you.
our own damn water.
I've been involved in corporate, my corporate life with expense reduction programs. You know, you bring a McKinsey and Company in.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
And of course, they always attack the water cooler, always attack.
I mean, I worked for a water filtration company for
So
5
you get rid of it,
years,
and then 2 years later, it comes back.
comes back.
Bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you look at coffee next or?
Listen, we make water. Bellows makes water. We should drink water.
Good water, right?
Pond water.
It's good pond
It
water.
is good pond water, actually. Pretty tasty.
Jeez. Oh, so where are we now?
Done with that.
Operating budget, you went over, you need to go back over the capital project update. And future capital project update?
No, we touched on those
Touched on it.
briefly. I think the only other thing I want to bring to your attention was, if you remember, we had a problem on the debt schedule before. There was just a typo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So this new
This
sheet
looks right.
reflects the changes, and I just wanted to bring that back to the board so that they see
That's the big sheet, right?
the big sheet.
Yeah. the big sheet.
This, yeah, this one that was folded
At least
up.
we can read it.
I have one more thing on the budget. I
Oh,
just
sure.
remembered. I'll just throw it out there. I don't know if there's money in the budget, but if there isn't, it would be a good idea to equip at least one of our cruisers with a AED.
You know, we have talked about,
And
we do have AEDs, and they are aging out. We've replaced some of them. We need to replace all of them.
right, but right now the PD doesn't have any in their.
I don't believe we have one in the cruiser.
Oh.
We don't.
So.
You're right.
And I'm sorry, please remind me again of that.
So we have one at recreation, we have one, and well, I think we have like 7 altogether, if I remember.
What is it?
Automatic external defibrillators.
Yeah.
The one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm assuming they're all CPR certified and trained to use the AED.
Yeah. But currently, of the 3 cruisers that we have, my thought was at least the one at the frontline cruiser, or whatever you wanna call it, should be equipped with an AED for,
Yeah.
you can buy one for like $1,500.
Where did the one come from, the time we had, a heart attack in the?
We have
theater?
one outside the theater here.
There's one here.
There's one here.
Yeah.
Near
Okay.
the popcorn machine.
Good places, okay.
Just don't get butter.
So I just wanted to say that if there's somehow we should,
What do those cost, you know?
I think
Anywhere from $2,000 to, they're about two to 2,500. It just depends on what type you get. Some of them now are digital. They'll talk to you, they tell you what to do. I mean, you can get these really elaborate ones. The basic ones are not that expensive.
I don't see why we can't squeeze something out. Good idea.
so do we need to increase that by $1,500?
What line would we put that on?
I don't know.
Well, we
You wanna
can
build
buy
that
it
in
part
there?
of the general equipment line. We have that
Yeah.
extra money. We'll just find a way to buy it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good idea. Thank you.
One other thing that I've got from the budget, which I brought this up a few times, it's not a monetary thing, but we are we are negotiating contract.
Right, yes.
And the issue is the town office hours.
Okay.
We went to a 4-day week in response to COVID. And we're still on a 4-day week. The contract with the union specifically calls for a 5-day week.
Mhm.
Now, the
All the
town
other
clerk,
departments work by.
town clerk is, that's an elected position. I don't know. The town clerk isn't covered under the union contract, right? But my feeling is we're a service business. We ought to be open 5 days a week. And I think if, as you know how unions go, if you go past this cycle and leave the language in the contract the way it is, you'll get, and you try sometime later to go to 5 day a week, you're gonna get hit with past practices, complaint. So I think, I think for all practical purposes, even though COVID is not over, the response to COVID is over. And I think we ought to go back to a 5-day week.
I agree with that, and I've spoken to Scott a few times, I'm sure we all have. What are you thinking, Scott? Because we had a negotiating meeting today, we didn't talk about that.
No, we've not talked about it. There's some issues with, we changed the hours so that we're open earlier in the morning to give people an opportunity to come as early as 7 o'clock, because there were some complaints when we were open at 8, that people couldn't get here because they had to go to work. So part of the 10-hour days accommodates some of that, that people do come and do, tax payments and other transactions at that time of the morning. So that's a concern.
I mean, you could start, somebody could start at 7 o'clock and somebody start at 8.
Stagger it.
Yeah, and then you've got coverage.
But if it does say, if it's saying 5 days in there, then we're not meeting that.
And if you let it go, it just, like I say, you're stuck. You're forever stuck from the union standpoint. And what I'm saying is, that's not a good
I don't
position
think we
for us.
specify hours of work, Jigs. I'm just looking at the contract with local 98. I don't believe that.
I didn't see
It
anything.
definitely has 5 days.
I don't think it does. It's got holidays, I don't see anything that,
Might say something about highway department or water and sewer, but
I'm looking while we're talking, so I'm not.
This is the,
office.
Right. Which are all covered under the same basic contract.
So I have a question.
I don't see it, but I'll look again, because I don't see it in here. Just as-
well, anyway, the issue is,
Right.
I got mine too.
you know, it appears that at least the majority of this board thinks we ought to be on a 5-day basis. And I think that,
I would say that based on what I've seen, it appears that the town office staff look at that as sort of a benefit. But it's not a defined benefit. It's one that was started.
if you're gonna, in other words, the flip side is, if you're gonna grant that, it will be a 4-day a week for the home office staff, then no salary increase. Get a quid pro quo for it. I mean, absolutely,
No, I understand what you're saying.
this is a hell of a benefit.
I think we gotta talk in
And we are
executive
having
session.
a brief executive session where no
Yes.
action will be taken after we get done. with the
Yeah.
agenda. So we
I
will
think
be there
can-
too.
We can chat more.
Did you have something to say, Wade?
I just wanted to ask, because I want to wrap my arms around it. So you're, in the current contract, it says 5 days.
I swore, I
Well,
swear
I've got mine here.
I
I
don't
don't
see it in-
remember seeing it.
No, I don't believe hours of work are specified.
that
And what you're saying is, what do you mean by if we let it go?
if you don't change the hours back, we made a change because of COVID, okay? If you leave it that way, it's gonna stay that way. If you try subsequently to go back to a 5-hour, the union will bring a grievance against us and basically say past practices apply. And even if you want it, you have to hire lawyers, and it's a big expense.
And
And
what's the concern with I mean, I understand that being a service, business, but is there business that can't be happening in those 4 days that's,
So I would say-
affecting you?
I mean, I remember, I mean, there's a lot of business that goes on, people,
It's right here,
I know,
Where is it?
I know,
page 14. Well, maybe 15 in yours, but 14 and 15. But it does say the normal work week shall
Oh, there it
consist of
is.
5 consecutive 8-hour
I
days,
knew it was-
Monday through Friday as follows. Thank you.
because, when you're,
Well, it's different for different departments, but yeah,
Yes, but it does
for the
say
town,
5
all staff,
5
Yes.
days.
5 days.
8 to 4:30.
Well, if it says it in there, that's not what we should be doing.
And my feeling is, people ought to, if they want to search for a record, okay?
On like Friday.
They
Yeah.
can't do it on Friday, okay? Not right.
A lot of people wait till the end of the week to get their
They
stuff
might
done.
they might come in and pay taxes or whatever, and it just, we ought to be open 5 days. It says 5 days in our
It
contract.
does.
And so, like I said, if we're not gonna be 5 days, if the overwhelming belief of the boards is that we should go to 4 days, then negotiate a price for that. It's a hell of a benefit.
But we've also talked about ways of retaining staff that's, from a benefit standpoint, so. To me, it's not.
But the contract should reflect, I guess, that's what.
No, I
Yeah.
get that. No, I agree that it should be reflected, but it's also different. The ways of doing business have shifted. And if that's viewed as a benefit for retention, I think that we need to be sensitive to that.
Well, I don't think it does. I think we've got,
I think there are a lot of
Same.
people that like the flexibility in their.
Jeff, we're talking about four people.
Is it more than
Four people.
How many people
Yeah,
work
about
in the building during the day?
Well,
Not just what we pay for the entire.
Four people, it's hard to find a replacement for some of those people.
Yeah.
So if they're able to work in a different environment,
they're
that's what
represented,
suits
I
them.
think there's at least three.
Currently
Non-represented
represented,
Are usually in the building,
okay,
but
I'm just asking questions because I mean, it hasn't affected my ability to do the things that I need to transact in town. Well,
this line of conversation has not occurred to the select board, I haven't heard them ever talk about it.
Well, like I say, this is
They leave it to
union
management.
negotiation.
Yeah.
fine.
And it's time to,
Chase has a valid point.
Yeah, no, I get that, I'm not discounting it, I'm just saying they have
It
not.
should be addressed one way or the other, now's the time.
But that means for me to talk with Peter the next time we're meeting in a couple of weeks. So I guess that's what we'll do. And can bring them to see what they think. At least he thinks the board is meeting next Tuesday, so maybe we can, okay, was there anything else? Were we done with the
well, we had
budgeting at this
multiple
point?
inputs from various members on ARPA.
Yep.
So I made copies and stuff in that everybody's.
It looks like we have several different ideas about what we want to do, and now that we're finally getting that, I think it would probably behoove us to put this together in some kind of like poll.
without
then-
money.
With that, well, yeah, like an online poll, like what do you call those monkey, I can't remember what those things are. You know, what I mean, there's the doodle, thank you, doodle poll, and then you just list all the items and people, then we go in there and we mark up which ones we think are appropriate, and then we see which ones have the greater numbers, and that's kind of where we go, where our heads are moving, based upon all the input we can see. I think, Jigs, you're the only person that hasn't produced a list, or did you?
I don't have one.
Okay, but you've seen our list.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could do that if, I don't know, do you want me to do it? I don't care, do you want staff to do it?
We'll try to put something together.
But if I mean, I think Gary's used a doodle poll before.
Yeah, you're talking about a survey for us.
Yes, a survey for us, just for
We go
us.
in and
We go in and prioritize what we
rank
think,
them. the way
yeah, we can
yeah.
rank them, and that way we know what we're looking at, well, with the highest,
Yeah.
ranking, we'll wind up getting,
Yep.
financed, yeah. That, I think that works for the whole
Okay.
project, because otherwise we could just sit here for another hour going all over.
Right.
Oh, yeah. it's a waste.
And that doesn't seem to
I don't think
make
we get
sense.
to a consensus if we.
I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and then we can argue about it afterwards.
Right,
When we get our priorities in place, right?
Well, no, I think
Just
that's a
have
good,
time to develop a good argument.
Yes, develop a good argument. I think it's a great idea.
That's all right, I will work on that.
That sounds good, thank you. Let me see. Review item, if we're done with that, then review agenda items for next meeting on the 28th.
So I will finalize all of the changes to all of the budgets and get it out for the meeting, so we can take a look at it, have a first look at. We'll update the ARPA. I think there was something else that was escaping me. It'll come back.
Scott, Jamie Barrick here. Maybe it was you were gonna call on me. I had a comment on the budget, Deb. I've had my hand raised here for a while. I'm just wondering, and I apologize, I missed the total cost on that Sally port that you guys were discussing.
The current estimate's roughly 800,000, with 150 of that as a contingency.
Oh, okay, understood. That doesn't justify saving idle time on the vehicles, but my other question would be, at the end of fiscal year, what do we expect Bellows Falls general fund to be, plus or negative, before we go into tax season?
Well, the result of operations, I think last year we added 50,000 to fund balance.
58,000, something like that.
Roughly,
Yeah.
and I guess we're trending probably close to that same number. And we still have roughly 600 and some odd thousand in fund balance, which is well in excess of the 20%
Needed, yeah.
By the auditor.
that the
Yeah.
auditors recommend. So the board has some decisions to make about. That's not healthy to keep that.
About drawing down.
Right.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, we can't see you because the large screen doesn't have Zoom on it.
I thought that you had raised
No.
your hand for emergency management. Just
No,
asked if
No, I was trying to put it down, but I understand the importance. I understand the importance of the Sally Port, but $800,000, yeah, that's a lot to look at right now. So, all right, thank you very much.
That is not in the budget, by the way.
By the way.
Right.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Okay,
thanks.
yeah. All right, what's that?
We already went over the agenda items for next meeting, right?
No, I said I had something.
Yes, okay, there you go. We didn't get to finish.
Did we add a line item for the next, about taking down unneeded telephone poles?
You know the problem with those energy poles, right? Whoever puts them up, now they want that person taken down. The phone company doesn't find any, there's no profit to be made in that, so that's why those continue to sit. And they're a constant source of irritation for many people. But put them on there, and we can have that same conversation. And Scott can call people, and they'll still say, yeah,
Public Service Commission. We can talk about it. There is a process, but it's very painful.
There's approximately 22 of them between Atkinson Street
I
and
know.
Rockingham Street
Yeah.
that
You could make a
could
motion.
potentially come down.
Yeah, GMP comes up, they move the stuff on the top pole to a new pole, then they cut down the pole, and then it's time for phone and cable to come and do their bit and move all that stuff. If they're all moved off, well, then they gotta go, but still is it.
But I'll put it on, we can have a conversation.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can be brief.
And may well be.
We could be as long as you want. Just talking about.
Okay, and we're gonna be reviewing the budget all over again, so.
Yes.
We cut through each piece. And review agenda items for a joint board meeting, well, we already had one today.
So
Emergency
what
management.
would you like me to, well, emergency management is one, what would you like me to do about the police conversation?
Police conversation needs to
Town
be
police,
started,
yeah,
town police, we need to start talking about it.
yeah.
I mean, it's a long-term conversation.
Correct.
We don't know what anything will happen or continue to change regionally. They don't have enough staff. And there are a few people in Rockingham who think they need service, so.
Well, and the select board needs to know that the idea of hiring the sheriff for rural Rockingham is not a good idea. A lot of people don't think it's a very good idea. And I think it gets to the issue of town policing.
Yeah.
You know, do we need, do Rockingham and Saxon River people now feel that they need coverage?
Saxon River already
And
pays.
that they, not only that, but they want the town to pay for it. Then my feeling is, we're in the same boat, we're on that same team. You know, we want police.
Right. Like I said, the last thing I could find is 2010, so it's, you know,
There was a merger.
well, this was just a discussion of
Yeah.
using police services
Oh, okay.
from the village in
Yeah.
town.
Right, and that's.
The last thing I could find of any written substance that was shared with the boards.
Yeah.
If there's something else, I don't have copies of it.
I don't think it's come up.
Okay.
And so to be clear, at the annual meeting, I said, because based upon the newspaper article, that Scott's conversation with them, which was actually about emergency services, ambulance.
Right.
Was misinterpreted at their meeting because they changed the language about their monies for the Winnebago County Sheriffs and made it more neutral. So they could hire anybody to do their policing services. It wasn't us. But the article made it look like that was the entire, that was the conversation, but it was not. Ambulance services is still a different concern
We have a whole nother conversation.
about that. For policing, yes, truthfully, we could probably, because we're here, we probably could have done a better job, but it still might cost more money. And originally, there's no guarantee on where that $6,000 is going for time, 2 hours a week. But the conversation that was had by at least one board member at the select board is that now we can tool it to tell them where we want them to go. Okay, well, now it looks like we're just taking $6,000 and throwing it at one particular neighborhood, and the rest of rural Rockingham isn't gonna get any service. We don't know, but it's still clearly not an effective way to police. So that conversation, we need to start at Joe Board. and see where it goes. Review and approve orders, bills, and warrants. Did everybody get a chance to sign?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Other business. Scott,
No, nothing. All set.
wait,
All good.
Jakes. The only thing I would say is I want to hear the upshot on the village banner because we have to get it up sometime in the middle of April.
Sean was working on the price,
Okay,
so we do have.
for our annual meeting
Is
and
working on it,
elections.
so I should hopefully know something soon.
Maybe we're gonna teach the town a few things on getting some more advertising. Who knows? And thank you for your efforts too. Is that thing still hanging around down here? The purple banner?
I think he took it. Or did he
He
take
might have
it?
taken
He
it.
might have taken it with him.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was it. Stephanie.
Yeah, there was a lot of conversation here earlier about some police and the fire as to what they did with the event that we had, but also thank you to the highway department.
Yeah.
There was a lot of heavy wet snow, and it's a lot of time, but we're driving a plow truck or
Sure was.
plow vehicle or
I
whatever.
think they're still at some of that.
Yeah.
busy week.
Not done.
They've been working with Green Mountain Power. to
Yeah.
help Clear areas to try to get people to roads that are closed, so they've been working,
Non-stop,
I
pretty much.
really appreciate it, yeah, they've done a nice job.
Check. I just want to say, the fact that I wanted emergency management to be placed on here to talk about it didn't mean I disregarded any of the fire or police or any emergency services. I appreciate every damn thing they do. I do. I just see that there are community members who don't see what they're doing, and they also feel that they're being underappreciated or underrepresented. I wanted to make sure they had some time to do that. And that is, no matter what, how much we do, there's always something that won't make everybody happy. So I just wanted that opportunity. And I do appreciate everything they've done. And everything.
Learn from it, and improve next time.
Yep, exactly. And so you'll have your debriefing meeting, and then you'll see what went right, what went wrong. what
We're
we need to do.
entertaining an executive session.
Yes, we will have a brief executive session, and there'll be no action taken. Would you like to do the honors?
Sure.
It's on contracts, the same one.
So it's the second page there.
I'm going
There's at
to
least
two
two
votes.
these two votes, yeah.
make the motion that we enter into an executive session to discuss personnel, labor relations and contracts and employees where premature general knowledge may clearly place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage. And to enter into an executive session under 1 VSA 313A1, and invite the municipal manager in for same.
Need a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the second?
I move that the board enter into an executive session to discuss contractual matters under provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Need a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are in executive session.
This meeting was recorded by Falls Area Community Television, located at 1 Hospital Court, Bellows Falls, Vermont. If you would like a copy of the meeting, our phone number is 802-463-1613, or email us at fact810@gmail.com. Falls Area Community TV, keeping government honest.